2014 is just about over, so we're getting ready to begin a new year, which means as WWE fans, we're starting to already think ahead to the upcoming WrestleMania, starting to envision potential matchups and talk about how that card looks, what we think might work, might not work, will the show be good, will it not be good, da 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 da. Well, before we get to WrestleMania, one of the major things that has to take place first is the Royal Rumble. And as always with the Royal Rumble, the pay-per-view ultimately begins and ends with the Royal Rumble match itself. And every year the discussion ultimately gravitates towards who should win that year's Royal Rumble, because in part, that's where the road to WrestleMania really begins, and you need to find out who that Royal Rumble winner is going to be, so that way you can see how everything else could potentially be set in motion heading into WrestleMania season. So with that said, I decided it was a perfect time to talk about maybe who should win the 2015 Royal Rumble and how it's kind of an indication of what I talked about in a previous video, the problem for WWE with the WrestleMania 31 main event. I mean, I think you have a few different options and a few different directions that you could ultimately go. Obviously, one option the WWE can go down is the Roman Reigns path. I mean, here's a guy that kind of fits that traditional WWE mold of the things that they look for in a top guy. This is a guy that is over very nicely. He's a guy that you could see the logic maybe of setting in place a match between whether it's John Cena or Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 31, trying to get behind Reigns and establish him as the face of that next era of WWE. With that said, though, is he really ready for that spot? Is he really the right guy at the right moment in the right situation? And I don't know if he is. I mean, you could have a lot of fans that fear that he's just going to be John Cena 2.0, and they're already tired of the 1.0 version. Why would they want a 2.0 version? Especially if you send Reigns at Lesnar at WrestleMania, you run the real risk of the crowd somewhat turning on Reigns and having Lesnar work the match more as a babyface than as a heel. Now, the dynamics here might be potentially disastrous, and I'm not sure if Roman Reigns is the best option at this point. I'm not saying that he isn't, but I'm not saying that he is for sure. I mean, if you go with an audible, it seemed like Reigns would be the guy still at this particular moment, but an audible could be called. But let's look at some of those audible options. You look at Dean Ambrose. Now, here's a guy that's really broken out in 2014. Here's a guy that the crowd is really embracing. Here's a guy that is big enough to be somewhat believable in a big spot, yet has that indie background, that pedigree to appeal to the more hardcore fans. He's definitely much more polished than a Roman Reigns. He's definitely more well-rounded. He's more of an overall talent. And you could see where if you put the belt on Dean Ambrose at WrestleMania, you could be able to do some decent business with him. With that said, though, is Dean Ambrose really the type of guy that WWE wants to put in that type of spot unless they have no other choice? Well, I'm not sure it is. Are they really to go into the lunatic fringe to that degree, especially if they have other potential options available to them? Also, when you look at an Ambrose, who are you really going to send him at? You're going to send him at Brock Lesnar? There's no story there. And a guy that can't beat Bray Wyatt or Seth Rollins is going to be able to beat Brock Lesnar? I mean, come on. Whether you like the guy or not, we bitch and talk about believability all the time. Well, where's the believability in that? And then on the flip side, the only other real option you would have is to send him at Cena, which the dynamics of that would be better. But again, that would result in Cena winning the belt for the 16th time. And at the end of the day, you always have that fear that Cena's ultimately going to get his. So how much better off will Ambrose really be for going over him there? And you don't even have a guarantee that he would go over him there. So how much of a realistic option is Dean Ambrose? You look at Dolph Ziggler. Similar thing. There's no dynamic. There's no story there to him beating Brock Lesnar. I mean, come on. Whether you like the guy or not, let's be honest here. Where's the believability? Where's the relatability? Don't give me that shit about, underdog, skip. Yeah, that goes beyond underdog to looking like he get his ass whooped. Furthermore, if you have Dolph Ziggler win the Rumble, is it kind of a ripoff in a way of what happened with Daniel Bryan last year? Because in part, the only way you'd have Ziggler win the Rumble at this point, frankly, is because the crowd would swell behind him so much. So would the dynamics necessarily work the same? Furthermore, when you look at a Dolph Ziggler, he's had opportunities, he's had chances. I don't know he's been given the best opportunities or the best chances, but he has been given opportunities and chances. And what has he really, frankly, done with them? You're also talking about a guy that right now has that burden of being the IC champion. So are you really going to have him win the Rumble and go on to WrestleMania? And then if you don't go the Lesnar route, then you still have to go the Cena route, which means that Cena again would be world champion again heading into WrestleMania. And while the dynamics will work better between Ziggler and Cena, is Cena really going to put Ziggler over the right way? Is Cena even going to put Ziggler over at all? Do you really want Ziggler to win the Rumble to potentially not win at WrestleMania? And even if he does, if the WWE isn't really behind the guy, if they really don't believe in the guy and they're not going to go there with that guy, then why even get to that point? And that would be a major concern with Dolph Ziggler, is they would sit there and have him win the freaking Rumble, win the belt at WrestleMania from Cena, and then his first major feud after that might be somebody like The Miz. How much are they really showing that they believe in the guy? How much are they showing that they really buy into him? How much are they showing they're really going to follow up with him? And again, when you talk about Ziggler, where's the character? After all these years, where's the fucking character? They still haven't really established a character for Dolph Ziggler. Is that the type of guy you really want at the top? I mean, realistically. At least CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, guys like that. They had characters. They had characters you could relate to, you could understand, that you could get behind. Where does Dolph Ziggler really have a character? He really freaking does it, if you really think about it. And then again, from a merchandise standpoint, again, this is something important from a WWE's perspective for sure. Who the fuck's going to buy Dolph Ziggler merchandise? I mean, who really does buy Dolph Ziggler merchandise? What type of merchandise does he have that would be able to be envisioned as being a top seller to the point where you could justify making him a champion? I mean, what else do you got? You got Randy Orton. Okay, so you could turn Randy Orton babyface, and maybe you could have him win the Rumble, and maybe you could have a certain level of believability to a degree with Orton facing Lesnar at a freaking WrestleMania. Otherwise, the alternative, if he didn't go that route, would be Randy Orton versus John Cena at WrestleMania. Oh, baby, could you imagine? Or a third option, it opens up another option to where you could have Seth Rollins cash in and Seth Rollins be the champion heading into WrestleMania. But do you really want to send Seth Rollins into WrestleMania as the champion to where you're potentially having Randy Orton go over him? Because at the end of the day, if you go down this option, Randy Orton as a babyface isn't necessarily the best thing. Furthermore, if you just have Randy Orton win the title at WrestleMania, it still feels like it has for so many years that it's ultimately about Cena, Orton, Triple H, and that damn company, and that's all that fucking matters. Or you get to the situation where Rollins goes into Mania the champion, and he leaves the champion, but it's done in such a bullshit way that it doesn't help Rollins. It's not good for Orton. It's not good for any fucking body. I mean, it could kind of work, but really, if you're in a position where you're entertaining the thought of Randy Orton winning the 2015 Royal Rumble, maybe that's an indication of just how bad off you currently are. One of the toughest things for the WWE to do nowadays is create real heels, and in particular create real monsters that also happen to be real monster heels. Well, they've got one of those in Rusev. And, you know, when you look at Rusev, you could make an argument based off of what he's done in 2014 that he could be a guy that should be considered to win the 2015 Royal Rumble. Now, of course, he's currently saddled with the U.S. title, so are you really going to have your mid-card champion win the Rumble and then go on to Mania and face the world champion there? I don't know. Now, you can sit there and maybe send a Rusev at a Brock Lesnar, but then you run into an issue, too, of if you do that with a Lesnar, Lesnar instantly becomes the face, which kind of defeats the whole purpose, doesn't it, of having Lesnar beat Taker at WrestleMania, having Lesnar beat Cena at SummerSlam, having Lesnar work as the face and Rusev as the heel, and then again you have the concerns of why would you give Rusev all of this when he's not necessarily a character with the longest shelf life or the longest ability to run? It's a good one-trick pony, but it's kind of a one-trick pony, and how much are you going to get out of that one trick? Then on the flip side, if you send him at Cena, and let's say you have Cena beat Lesnar, again, it comes down to Cena being champion again at a WrestleMania, being a 16-time world champion. Who's to say that Rusev would even beat Cena? And even if he does, would it really be in an effective way? And furthermore, wouldn't Cena just end up coming out on top like he so often freaking does? Rusev would be an appealing option to a degree. But at the end of the day, it's really not right either. I mean, frankly, to me at this point in time, the guy that would make the most sense and should be the logical choice, except the WWE can't help but screw things up, is Ryback. Here's a guy that got that big rocket ship push in 2012. Fans kind of got liked, kind of got behind, but then kind of didn't. And then they turned him heel because they're dumb dicks. Then they buried him. They sabotaged him. Then he was gone for a period of time, and now he's back. You know, when you're looking for a guy to beat a Brock Lesnar, if that's still your plans, is to have somebody go over Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania to get some return on that investment of having him beat Cena at SummerSlam, having him end the streak at WrestleMania. Here comes a Ryback. The crowd is behind this guy. The people actually like this guy. You know, he's a guy that you could also envision the WWE getting behind because of his look, because of the way he's packaged, because of his style. You could see the WWE getting behind this guy. You could see this guy being able to move merchandise. You could see this guy being a part of the future for the company. So you could see some elements of where sending Ryback at Brock Lesnar could potentially work. Because Ryback wouldn't quite have the same feeling from the fans that Roman Reigns does, because they've seen Ryback get to a certain point, but feel like so many other guys in the fact that he got the rug yanked out from under him. They did stupid things with him. Then they turned him for no fucking reason. Then he was buried, and then he was gone. So there's some appeal there. You know, from a believability standpoint, he's most certainly more believable taking on somebody like a Brock Lesnar than a Dean Ambrose or a Dolph Ziggler is. And from a dynamic standpoint, it works much better than a Randy Orton or a Rusev, frankly. And if you wanted to send Ryback and Cena, the dynamics there could work incredibly well as well. But I don't know that the timing feels right. It doesn't feel like the opportunity is right. And so much about this is timing and opportunity and seizing upon correct momentum. If you'd had Ryback be the sole survivor on Team Cena at Survivor Series 2014, then maybe it works. And maybe the timing is right. But you can't sit there and have him be one of the first guys eliminated, then be in a crappy match with Kane at a pay-per-view, and then come back and have him all of a sudden win the freaking Royal Rumble. It just doesn't work. And I'm being honest here. Kind of my whole point is when I look at who should win the 2015 Royal Rumble, I don't know if there is a really good answer at this point. I don't know that there's one guy that truly does stand out above the rest, because I don't see any of these guys being an ideal option. I really don't. That's a problem. You talk about, like I did, the problem with the WWE for the WrestleMania 31 main event. Well, you see it really here when you're trying to determine who should win the 2015 Royal Rumble and why. None of these options appeal to me all that much at this point. I can make arguments for him, and I could just make as many arguments, if not more so, against him. How could the WWE do this to themselves? How could they be so fucking stupid? How could they sit there at a time where they decided to throw all the eggs into the Lesnar fucking basket with part of the whole logic and rationale, as ridiculous as it being, that they would get somebody at WrestleMania ready to go to be that next guy, to continue that investment of all those years from Taker. And now you get to this point where it's really shit to get assholes to elbows, feet to the pavement time, and you don't have a clear-cut option ready. If anything signifies and epitomizes the WWE today, it's the fact that you can look at the 2015 Royal Rumble and say, I really don't know who should win, even if I have a belief in a guy that I think I want to win. Because frankly, at the end of the day, I don't know how good any of the fucking options with any of these guys are.